All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll go ahead and let the committee secretary know that she can begin her recording. And welcome to the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Senator Brooks, Senator Hammond, Senator Pickard,
Here.
Senator Spearman,
Here.
Chair Harris.
Here, and we will mark Vice Chair Brooks and Senator Hammond present as they arrive. As always, I'll endeavor to make that known so that you'll be able to mark them. All right. A couple of reminders. Please be courteous and respectful with each other during this meeting, even if you disagree with another person's position. For those participating in Zoom, please be sure to go ahead and mute your microphone when you are not speaking. Since the building is still closed, I wanted to just go over a couple of options for public engagement. First, you can go to the legislature's website, register on Nellis, and be sent a phone number to call in to testify on a bill or to give public comment. You may also submit written testimony to the committee's email address or fax number, both of which are on the agenda. Third, Nellis has an opinion application for sharing your views on a bill. You can find it under legislation or under committee meetings. Fourth, all of our meetings can be viewed either online through Nellis or through the legislature's YouTube channel. On the top of every page on Nellis, there's a link to the help page, which has detailed instructions on accessing all of these options if you need some help. First on the agenda, and the only bill on the agenda, is Senator Orenshaw's bill. Give me just 1 second and I'll look up the number. Senate Bill 134. Senator Orenshaw, thanks so much for being with us. Please feel free to start your presentation when you are ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris, Vice Chair Brooks, and members of the Senate Growth and Infrastructure Committee. For the record, James Orenshaw. I represent State Senate District 21. That's parts of Henderson and unincorporated Clark County. Chair Harris, thank you for scheduling Senate Bill 134. Thank you to your policy analyst, Ms. Scully, our former director of the research division. It was a pleasure working with her in preparation for the hearing. With your permission, Chair, I'd like to make a brief introduction and then turn it over to Ashley Beal, my constituent, and then if it's okay with you, Chair, walk you through the bill and the amendment. There is an amendment on Nellis, and then take any questions. A little over a year ago, Chair, prior to the pandemic, I was contacted by a constituent, Ms. Beal, who you'll see here on the screen, who I had the opportunity to meet with and go over some life-changing things that happened in her life. And thankfully, she's here with us now, just celebrated her 30th birthday, and beneficiary of a heart transplant. And she came to me with an idea for some legislation to change the way someone registers to become an organ donor in Nevada. It's a way that would make Nevada at the forefront of the United States. Other countries around the world have this kind of policy, and there is an amendment that's on Nellis that addresses some issues that were presented to me that I believe makes the bill stronger and better. But with your permission, Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Beal and then walk the committee through the bill and the amendment and take any questions.
Welcome, Ms. Beal. Please feel free to proceed.
Thank you, Chair Harris, members of the committee. My name is Ashley Beal, and I'm a CAP attorney at the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. I'm here today to speak on behalf of Senate Bill 134. I turned 30 on March 3rd, and it was a birthday I would not have been able to celebrate without my donor, Jessica, and the gift of organ donation. In 2017, I had a heart attack, and the doctors still can't explain why. I've been an athlete my entire life. I was actively training for a 10K when it occurred. And neither my family nor I have history of cardiac conditions. But things went really poorly, and the left half of my heart died. I was placed on the most severe form of life support that exists called ECMO. And after surviving an induced coma and sepsis, I was eventually placed on the transplant list for a new heart because my old heart could not recover. From the day I was listed, May 29th, 2017, until the middle of July 2017, I resided full-time in the cardiovascular intensive care unit at the University of Utah. Every day was a waiting game to see whether a heart would become available that matched my blood type and my antibodies, and the wait was excruciating. I had multiple central lines, including a PICC line and a swan line, which is a direct line that goes from the veins in your neck and drops across to the top of your heart. I couldn't move from my bed to the chair next to my bed without a nurse present, and same goes for the toilet 2 feet away from the chair. I was attached to dozens of machines beeping constantly as medications kept me alive, and monitored every part of my body to make sure it was operating as it should. Sleep was nearly impossible, and every day felt like a new defeat because yet again, no hearts became available. Every day consisted of the same routine. I was only permitted to move if a nurse was present. I could go on 1 walk a day around the unit, 2 if I was lucky and the nurses had the time. I was unable to shower, and only 2 visitors were allowed to see me at a time. Finally, on June 28th, 2017, I received the call. A match had been found, and my transplant would occur the next morning. On June 29th, I went into surgery for over 4 hours, and my heart was replaced with my donor's heart. I spent the next few years really recovering. Even now, it's not an easy journey. I take immune suppressants every 12 hours to keep my body from rejecting my heart, but I'm here. I survived, and I'm alive. Unfortunately, organ donation is something that most people don't really think about until it becomes necessary for themselves or someone close to them. The United Network for Organ Sharing, also called UNOS, is a nonprofit that collects a lot of data pertaining to patients waiting for life-saving transplants, transplants and recovery rates. As of last night, there are 107,938 people waiting for a life-saving transplant in the United States. And another name is added to the waiting list approximately once every 10 minutes. 20 people die every day in the United States waiting on a life-saving organ transplant, and 1 deceased donor can save up to 8 lives through donation. According to the Health Resources and Services Administration, upwards of 90% of adults support organ donation, yet in Nevada, only approximately 41% of adults are actually registered organ donors. This rate is frankly abysmal. Add to this the fact that Nevada has no transplant centers, with the exception that UMC does kidney transplants, and Nevadans are suffering. To even seek a life-saving transplant, Nevadans must uproot their entire lives and move temporarily to California or Utah or Arizona, where their transplant can be completed, and then continually travel back and forth for care. I just counted, I made 7 trips to Utah in 2020 for ongoing care for my heart. Senate Bill 134 seeks to help alleviate some of those problems by switching to an opt-out organ donation system in which adults would be able to choose to opt out of organ donation at DMV rather than opting in. Many advanced countries already follow this model, including Austria, Belgium, Czech Republic, Finland, France, Greece, Hungary, Israel, Italy, Luxembourg, Norway, Spain, Sweden. And consequently, Spain has the highest donation rate in the entire world. The United Kingdom also switched to the opt-out donation system in May 2020, and recently Nova Scotia became the first Canadian province to adopt an opt-out organ donation system. I believe Nevada would be at the front end of an up-and-coming trend in organ donation across the United States over the next several years. To address just a few minor concerns, all major religions support organ donation, and for those who choose not to donate for religious reasons, they would of course be eligible to opt out just as anyone else would. This bill would eliminate the myth that doctors don't try as hard to save people who are organ donors. This is of course a myth to begin with, but it's a common myth that medical professionals don't work as hard to save people when they see that you're a registered organ donor. Senate Bill 134 would eliminate that concern because everyone would presumptively be an organ donor unless they chose to opt out, and no members of the care team would know that in advance. Additionally, being an organ donor provides some families with a sense of security and closure. My donor's mom and I have a really good ongoing relationship, and she has told me consistently how much it means to her knowing that a piece of her daughter lives on inside of me, and that despite her tragic loss, we were the same age, we were both 26, her life went on to mean something so powerful. It literally saved two people, myself and a kidney recipient. In conclusion, approximately 7,300 people in the US die every single year waiting for an organ transplant. Senate Bill 134 seeks to help alleviate that burden and reduce the number of unnecessary deaths by making more organs eligible for donation. Since 90% of the population supports organ donation, approving an opt-out system, people would still have the freedom to choose not to be a donor. But this bill has the potential to really, truly save lives. The uncertainty of waiting on a transplant is excruciating. I know this firsthand. I full-heartedly support Senate Bill 134 and respectfully urge the committee to move forward with the passing of the bill. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you guys have at this time.
Well, I'll just say very quickly, Ms. Beal, I believe we're all glad that you are here with us, and I'm sure the children that you serve at Legal Aid are also very blessed by your presence. If the secretary would please note that Senator Hammond and Vice Chair Brooks have both arrived, and I'll turn it back over to Senator Orenshaw to continue walking us through the bill.
Thank you very much, Chair Harris. Sections 1 through 4 of the bill change our statutory language so that the Nevada Department of Motor Vehicles application form for a new driver's license or an identification card would simply offer the one choice, the choice to opt out. And if the person does not exercise that choice to opt out, consent to be an organ donor would be presumed. The same choice would be given at the time of renewal of a driver's license or an identification card. There are some amendments. I've had some conversations with different stakeholders, and the amendments are on Nellis, and I'd just like to briefly walk through them. The intent of the first amendment is to exclude persons under the age of 18, which is consistent with the current program, and because minors require the permission of their parents or guardians to become an organ donor. The second two amendments would require the Nevada Department of Motor Vehicles to provide some basic signage and notification both in their offices and on the DMV website to ensure that Nevadans are made aware of the change and to adopt related policies and procedures. The fourth proposed amendment is a minor change in the type of material that would be offered to Nevadans, which makes sense given the change from an opt-in to an opt-out system. Finally, the last part of the proposed amendment would be to direct the Nevada Department of Motor Vehicles to work with organ donation groups and other interested organizations, medical associations, to help raise public awareness of the change in Nevada law and the new opt-out approach, as well as the benefits of organ donations. And Chair and members of the committee, on Nellis, there is a letter of support that was submitted by the Nevada Osteopathic Medical Association. I'm not sure if anyone from that organization is able to actually be here at the hearing, but there is a letter of support. And again, this is a work in progress, and I am committed to try to work with any other stakeholders to try to make sure that we get it right. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, Senator Orenshaw, thank you so much for that presentation. Do any members of the committee have questions for Senator Orenshaw or Ms. Beal? Senator Pickard.
Yes, I wouldn't want to disappoint anyone. Thank you, Ms. Beal. Although my cardiac issue was a lot more benign, just bradycardia, where it just stopped beating. Fortunately, with implantation of a pacemaker, I don't have to worry about that anymore. But I certainly appreciate where you're coming from. My question is this, and I've been getting some questions coming at me from disparate sources, actually, that had to do with the intersection of government and the use of our bodies without our consent. My understanding of the opt-in language from years ago was that, this is a person's body. The general consensus has been over the years that government can't make choices over our bodies, over our personal opinions. And yet this would seem to do violence to that concept. How do we square those two?
Through you, Chair, to Senator Pickard. So glad that you're well, and I know that you were in our thoughts and prayers when you were ill, and glad that you are well. My belief, Senator Pickard, is that with the language in the amendment, with robust notice on the part of the Department of Motor Vehicles as to Nevada being an opt-out state, and making that statement in support of organ donation, that no violence would be done in terms of anyone's rights to their body or their organs. The decision would still be there whether someone wanted to participate in being an organ donor or not to participate. There is a change in the language, a change in how the question is asked, but I would argue that the same autonomy that everyone exercises now would still be there. The question would be worded differently. And yes, Nevada would be making a statement by being the first opt-out state in the nation.
All right, I appreciate that. I just, the question came to me from the perspective of those that don't have contact with DMV. Either they're not driving, they resist contact with government, they're too old, they're disabled, and unable to drive. There's a whole, apparently, and I didn't know this before this came to me, but there's a whole host of people that don't have regular contact with DMV who, and since this appears to be going only through DMV sources, they wouldn't get that notice. What about those, particularly when we talk about the undocumented individuals that don't, even though we try to make all sorts of outreach to them so that they can come in and get driver's licenses and those sorts of things. There's a number of people that just don't engage with government and so likely wouldn't get this notice. How do we reach them? And even if they have notice and choose not to participate, the government's making that choice for them. Whereas with an opt-in, even if they don't have a driver's license, they can get an ID card and show that they're organ donors, which I am. So I certainly agree with the sentiment. I'm struggling with the idea of how does government have the right to make a decision on behalf of someone with whom they've not actually had a face-to-face or some affirmative contact?
And through you, Chair, to Senator Pickard, that's certainly not how I interpret the language on page 4 of the original bill, section 3. If we're looking at section 3, the amendment to NRS 451.558, and that's certainly not my intent. And if we need to tighten up that language to make it more clear, I'm open to any amendments. But the way I read the amendment on section 3 of the bill, page 4, is that the new opt-out provisions would be applicable only to folks who have that contact, either to get a Nevada driver's license or a Nevada ID card. Someone would still be opt-in in terms of their testamentary documents or any other communication provided for at NRS 451.558. That's how I read the bill. And if it needs to be clear, I'm certainly open to any language to clear that up, that this would be a process that would be applicable through contact with the DMV, either through that Nevada driver's license or the ID card.
All right, thank you for that. And thank you, Madam Chair.
And so, Senator Orenshaw, I have a question. Would this allow me, someone who currently has I currently have my driver's license, it's not expired. Would I automatically be presumed to have opted into organ donation prior to my next renewal?
Thank you for the question, Chair. That's certainly not my intent, and I'm hopeful that with the language in the conceptual amendment, when it comes out as a formal amendment, that it will be clear that no, there will have to be a decision by anyone who applies for either their first driver's license or identification card or for renewal of either of those documents, whether they want to opt out or not. That no one would be made an organ donor without having had that opportunity to answer that question. Do I want to participate or do I want to opt out? Certainly that's not my intent.
All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and move to Vice Chair Brooks.
Thank you, Chair Harris. And thank you, Ms. Beal, for sharing your experience and your story with us. That was powerful and is helpful in putting this into context. And thank you, Senator Orenshaw, for bringing this. My question's around your amendment, your proposed amendment, the fifth proposed amendment here. It says to add a provision to the bill directing the DMV to collaborate with organ donation organizations and other interested entities in the development of an awareness campaign to inform the public. But then it also says it's not intended to require the DMV to expend agency funds. What is your thought process around how that would go about? I think that's a very important thing to be able to educate folks on the change of the law. But how do we do that?
Through you, Chair Harris, to Vice Chair Brooks, here we were cognizant of trying to be respectful of the DMV's resources and certainly optimistic that as there have been, campaigns in the past in support of becoming an organ donor through the opt-in, that DMV will be able to continue to work with organizations, assuming that this passes and that Nevada becomes an opt-out state. Certainly I think for those of us who still go into DMV locations, there are, lots of big signs and ads promoting organ donation, talking about the choice to opt in. So I envision something similar happening in terms of the decision now to opt out should this change become law. I'm not sure if that answered your question well enough.
Let me follow up. So you're just saying just kind of a continuation of their current program, just change it from opt-in to opt-out?
Yes, but trying to highlight the change in Nevada law and that people, will want to talk about this with their loved ones, think about it before they make that trip into the DMV and give it some thought. I've had some, actually one person who wrote a paper about this subject come to me and talk to me a little bit about how, many people, they stand in line at the DMV, trying to make it to work, not be late and get their work done and don't really have a lot of time to think about the decision. And perhaps very many people who might give serious thought to being an organ donor, procrastinate and put it off and say, well, I'll mark no now. And, I've got to get to work. I want to talk to my family about it. I want to think about it. I really believe, and that's the opinion in this paper, and I was hoping to have this gentleman speak today, but he was unable to, allow people to have some more time to talk to their loved ones, to think about this decision before they either go into the DMV or go through the online process.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
All right, I'll turn to Senator Hammond, and Senator Orenshaw, please feel free to direct your answers to your colleagues.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really hope I can articulate this really carefully and do it the right way, because I want to ask this question, but I certainly don't want to offend. And this is something that took me a long time to consider, because I am also on my driver's license. I'm an organ donor. Here's the rub, though, and it goes back to what Senator Pickard had asked earlier. If you're asking that a robust program be put into place to educate people about a donor opt-out, the assumption is that the other program that they were running, where you were talking about an opt-in program, wasn't working well enough. And according to Mrs. Beal, we are atrocious here. We don't have enough people who are donating. So if they're not if the outreach program hasn't worked in the past, then what are we going to be doing differently in the future, telling people that you have to opt out? And so if we have an increase in the number of donors, is it because we're not outreaching enough and people didn't hear, and then by default, they're now in a program that they didn't necessarily know they were going to be a part of. And then again, it goes back to Senator Pickard and, what kind of a obligation do we, does the government have with the people where they're basically saying you're going to be a part of a program unless you know better and want to get out. That's my concern, is that we're going to be capturing a lot. Maybe our numbers will go up like Spain's did. And I don't know about Nova Scotia and their numbers. I'd like to find out, what kind of impact this has had in a place as recently like Nova Scotia. Like find out where the numbers have gone up because of it. But my concern is, Senator, that we're going to get a lot of people who didn't know that this was in place, and they just never thought about it. They glazed over it. I mean, that's a tough day when you go in there and you get your driver's license. You got a lot of things on your mind. Now, I recently went in there with my 15-and-a-half-year-old just getting the driver's permit, and there's a lot of paperwork thrown at you on that one day, and a lot of signatures and a lot of things you're supposed to be doing. How, what happens if they just glaze over this and the next thing you know, they're organ donors and didn't know they were supposed to be? Is there going to be something? I mean, first of all, I worry about that. And then secondly, is there something in the bill that says, hey, you can come back the next day and rectify that if you didn't want it, or next month or something like that? And would you have to pay the cost for a new license because they put it on the license?
Thank you for the question. And I know I'm doubling back a little bit on Senator Pickard's question, but I just want to assure the committee that this bill would only be applicable, as I intend it, to people who have contact with the Department of Motor Vehicles, who get a driver's license or an identification card, not to any other form of becoming an organ donor that's currently listed at NRS 451.558. My intent with the amendment is to make sure that notice is robust and that no one would become a donor by default without consciously deciding whether they want to opt out or not. And I'm certainly open to any language that makes that tighter or more effective. Under existing statute and regulation, I don't believe there's anything that if someone has second thoughts under the current program, whether they opt in and then change their mind or have a talk with their loved ones and decide they don't want to be an organ donor, to prevent them from changing that. And I certainly don't intend there to be any difference here. If someone decides to not opt out and then a week later suddenly has second thoughts and thinks this isn't right for them, to change that. Whether there is a fee, that I believe that there is a small fee, and I have to check on that, but I believe that there is a small fee involved in change to a license. But I'm not 100% sure of that in that question. I have to do a little more research and get back to you, but I believe there is a small fee. But certainly the intent is that this decision be a conscious decision, and that certainly by becoming the first opt-out state in the union, Nevada makes a strong statement of commitment to organ donation, but that every citizen makes the same conscious decision they make now, but there is a change in the wording in terms of how it is asked.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer, Senator. And your effort and your goal is a noble goal, and I believe that. Again, when you use terms like robust notification, the reason I worry about terms like that is, I've been in education where we send notice after notice after notice home with students. The people in general are inundated with lots of notification, news, all this kind of stuff. And so my worry is that, again, that the information is glazed over, and without knowingly getting involved in a program, somebody is now enrolled in something that is important, right? This is an important step in life. And so that's what I kind of worry about, is that the next thing you know, they're organ donors, and they may not have ever intended to be organ donors.
I understand your concern, Senator Hammond, and that's certainly not the intent. And I'm certainly open to, if language needs tightening, trying to make sure that that even though Nevada would be opt out, that there's no one who doesn't understand the decision or doesn't have the time to think about it.
And Senator Ornshaw, I just have a question about conversations that you've had with the DMV on the form that any changes to the current driver's license application form that might be needed pursuant to this bill. So I know right now that you go in and you can choose a box to opt in. If we changed it to opt out, would there be room to make this language, 30-point font where the rest is, let's say, 12-point? or also require it to be bold and in all caps. In a similar way that we may do, for the lawyers, like an arbitration clause, right? We've made that stand out a bit differently. Have you had any discussions about what that might look like, or is the plan to keep it in the same font as currently on the form?
Thank you for the question, Chair. Certainly my intent is that it would be as big as practical and as, bright and easy for someone to see as practical. In the past, certainly when I've worked on bills and we've tried to specify things like that in statute, I've often been told, by agencies that it's better to leave it to regulation and allow that to be adopted in regulation. And as I understand it, there'll be new programming of computer systems, and that's something that will be required. I think there's some discussion of that in the fiscal note. But I think there, as to whether we put the font level in statute or whether that is left up to regulation, that's I think a decision that I'm open to discussing. I know in the past I've had a lot of pushback with agencies about tying their hands with things in statute, but I would certainly want it as big and bright and noticeable as possible.
Thank you. Senator Spearman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I've heard some of the same concerns that Senator Pickard and Senator Hammond have expressed in terms of the government having control over one's body. I wonder, Senator Orenshaw, if you would be willing to engage those who don't want the government to have control of their body when they're dead, but it's okay for the government to have control of their reproductive organs when they're alive. And there's got to be a pedagogical process that allows one to accept A, but reject B. So I'm wondering if you would be willing to engage in some type of a conversation that would explain that pedagogical process. And perhaps it may be useful not only for this bill, but for other bills.
And thank you, Senator Spearman. I'm open to talk to anyone about the bill and about their concerns. But I just want to make it clear, my intent is not that anyone takes control over anyone's decisions about their body, about their organs. Certainly Nevada, if this passed, would be the first opt-out state. But my intent is that the decision be as clear as it is now, and that people have that right to think about it and make that choice. I certainly do hope that if this passes, more people will have the time to think about it and choose to not opt out, and that there will be more organs that can save more people's lives, and that that'll be part of the program in Nevada in terms of helping people who need those organs. But my intent is not that anyone take control over anyone's body or organs. But I'm happy to talk to anyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Are there any additional questions from members?
May I say one thing in response to a concern? I apologize.
No, please go ahead.
I know that there's been a lot of discussion about, kind of this government control of the body after death. And one thing that I just want to make very clear with this is, of course, the intent is not that at all. And the intent is there that everyone have the opportunity to opt out. But additionally, becoming an organ donor does not impact anything that occurs with the body after death other than the removal of the organs. So organ donors are still eligible to have a burial. They are still able to have open casket funerals. The process by which organs are procured is so advanced. So what happens with someone's body, whether they are buried, whether they have an open casket funeral, whether they're cremated, those decisions would still be entirely in the hands of the deceased if they have an advance directive or a living will, or their family members. The whole body would still be within the control of the family. The program would just, provide the opportunity for people to more easily become donors for their organs.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Beal. Before I turn it over to testimony, I just wanted to let the committee know I may have to step away during testimony to present one of my own bills. If I do, I will hand it over to my capable Vice Chair, Senator Brooks. And with that, let's go ahead and open up testimony in support of SB 134.
Thank you, Chair. Callers, if you would like to testify in support of SB 134, please press *9 now to enter the queue. Once again, to testify in support of SB 134, please press *9 now. Chair, at this time, it appears no callers wish to testify in support of the bill.
Okay, let's go ahead and turn it over to those who'd like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 134.
Certainly, Chair. Callers, if you would like to testify in opposition to Bill SB 134, please press *9 now. Once again, to testify in opposition, press *9 now. Caller with the last 3 digits of 105, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You may begin now.
Lynn Chapman, Independent American Party State Treasurer, LYNNCHAPMAN. We are in opposition to SB 134. I'd like to start off by saying that my sister-in-law 28 years ago was the 418th person to receive a heart transplant from UCLA. We were blessed to have her in our lives for another 13 years. My brother was killed in 2003. He had listed on his driver's license that he wanted to be a donor. He had many donations of his body and tissues made that day he died. In his death, he helped to save many lives. My family has been involved in both sides of this issue, giving and receiving. The DMV has many links for information about body donation and tissue donations. Forms to get a person started with that, their links, PSAs have been going on for many years, and everyone knows how things already work. Everybody knows that you go to the DMV or you can get the forms from the DMV for this particular thing. Now you want to confuse the issue and confuse the people. People understand opt-in. They work with opt-in all the time. Now you want to opt out. And we believe that opting out is the wrong way to go. It feels sneaky and very dangerous. Please vote no on SB 134. Thank you.
All right, caller with the last 3 digits of 859, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You may begin now.
Good afternoon. This is the State President of Nevada Families for Freedom, JANEHAN. We oppose SB 134 on anatomical gifts, not because we oppose the choice of giving organs, but because it takes away the basic right of affirmative consent. This bill changes our anatomical gifts bill from an opt-in to an opt-out. Nevada has adopted the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act recommended by the Uniform Commissioners, which identify areas that would benefit from uniformity nationwide. The Clinical Journal of the American Society of Nephrology states in their paper on the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act, the United States culture is deeply steeped in individual rights, starting with the Constitution and mirrored through the many laws, regulations, and cultural norms that prioritize individual autonomy. a rights-based culture is well matched with the Uniform Anatomical Gifts Act legal framework, requiring an affirmative, voluntary decision to make a gift. Under this opt-in policy, the United States experienced over a 27% in growth in deceased organ donors and transplants in the last 10 years. This includes 142 million registered donors as of January 2018, representing over 54% of the adult population. Some areas of the United States significantly exceeded the donation rate of Spain. Nevada's law on anatomical gifts should not be changed from opt-in to opt-out. Affirmative choice is working well under the Uniform Anatomical Gifts Act. Please vote no on SB 134. Thank you.
If there are any more callers wishing to testify in opposition to SB 134, please press star 9 now to enter your place in the queue. Chair, at this time, there are no more callers wishing to testify in opposition to SB 134.
All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and turn to anyone who'd like to testify in the neutral position on SB 134.
Certainly. Callers, if you'd like to testify in a neutral position to Senate Bill 134, please press star 9 now to enter your place in the queue.
And while we're queuing up the line, it looks like Ms. Laney would like to jump in on the video and testify in neutral. So we'll go ahead and take your testimony at this time.
Thank you very much, Chair Harris. For the record, Tanya Laney, Administrator of the Nevada DMV. I am here today to testify neutral on behalf of the department. I would just like to say that we did have an opportunity to see that an amendment did come through that will change our current fiscal note that we had submitted of no fiscal impact to now we believe it may have a minimal fiscal impact. Our team is actively reviewing that amendment now and we'll get that submitted. And then we would just like to please ask Senator Orenshaw, we understand there's going to be a working group on this item and we ask that the DMV please be considered to be a part of that working group so that we can help you answer any questions or add substance for SB 134.
All right, thank you. And we'll go ahead and turn back to the phone line for any neutral testifiers who've queued up.
Will the caller with the last 3 digits of 900, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You may begin now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Dan Musgrove, DAN MUSGROVE, Strategy 360 here today on behalf of the Nevada Donor Network. The Nevada Donor Network is the OPO for 14 of the 17 Nevada counties, and it is our staff who obtain the authorization for donation and work in accordance with the Anatomical Gift Act and work with families and loved ones for that amazing gift of life that they all give. And I can't think of a better spokesperson for organ donation than Ashley, and I absolutely applaud her efforts and the senators in this regard, but I'm afraid that Nevada Donor Network has a very deep concern that an opt-out system is likely to have unintended negative consequences that would actually result in decreasing the availability of organs and tissues. Now, Ashley mentioned a number of countries in Europe that have the opt-out approach, but there was a recent study in the American Journal of American Medical Association that demonstrates that the majority of those countries have actually experienced lower donation rates than jurisdictions within the U.S. They mentioned Spain that has the highest donation rate in Europe, and they believe that that is due to social and cultural factors as well as hospital work rather than the legal structure of an opt-out policy. And so there's a real possibility that donation rates in the United States, already among the highest in the world, may actually drop if opt-out is adopted. Now, right now, you have the European system allows for families to veto donation or or to be the final say. And I think that that is obviously something that we need to be mindful of, because a lot of times the information that's on a driver's license, whether it's opt-in or opt-out, does not reflect how the recipient feels at the time. Someone who is nearing end of life may change their mind. But the trouble with an opt-out is that you now have actually created an absolute no list, something that we've never had in the United States before. Now there is a group of people who have actually made the conscious decision that they don't want to donate, which could potentially put the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act in violation of that. And that's one of the things that we feel, especially that Section 3 would put us, as a previous testifier talked about, in contradiction with the UAGA. If you look at Section 3, number 1A, you're looking at not refusing to authorize. Now, one of the things that the UGA is actually based on, it's an affirmative voluntary act that cannot be met on the basis of inaction. And in other words, a failure to opt out. So this conflict with gift law could lead to legal challenges when it comes to anatomical gifts made under the opt-out system. We're also wondering, legal scholars have pointed to the possibility of a constitutional challenge to that presumed consent that the UAGA, that Nevada has adopted. So you probably would have to remove this gift, this opt-in, and put it in a different health care statute, because we would no longer be in sync with the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act. Now, Nevada Donor Network, on every metric that CMS tracks, is #1 in the world when it comes to both organ donation and folks who sign up to be recipients per thousand. Nevada Donor Network wants to do everything it can to promote organ donation. And believe me, this sounds like a great idea. It's just, there are reasons that no other state has adopted this, and there are concerns that it actually could go to the opposite direction of actually chilling folks, because it's a very important medical decision that we're asking folks to make. And we certainly don't want them to be, and I hate to use this word, but tricked into becoming a donor. And granted, I appreciate all the work that Senator Orenshaw has done in some of his amendment today. And we have had robust discussions with Senator Orenshaw about this. And believe me, Ashley's story is incredible. And I'm so glad that she had the ability to receive an organ donation. And believe me, I see this. Her heart is in absolutely the right place on wanting to expand organ donation. But we're just concerned about the unintended consequences, and commit to working with the senator and this committee to see if there's something that we can do. Thank you very much.
Chair, at this time, there are no more callers wishing to testify in a neutral position.
Okay. With that, then I will turn it back over to Senator Orenshaw if he'd like to make any closing comments.
Thank you, Chair Harris, and thank you, committee. I really appreciate your time, and I want to thank Ms. Beal for contacting me and for sharing what she's been through with the committee. Certainly the intent of this bill is to make a bold statement that Nevada would be the first opt-out state in the nation. There is no intent to replace anyone's conscious decision as to whether they want to participate or not. And I'm certainly open to trying to perfect any amendments that would make that clear. And I'm look forward to working with all the stakeholders. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Thank you, Senator Orenshaw. I'll go ahead and close the hearing on Senate Bill 134. We have no committee BDR introductions today, so we will turn it over to public comment.
Thank you, Chair. Callers, if you'd like to give public comment, please press *9 now to enter your place into the queue. Once again, to give public comment, please press *9 now. Chair, at this time, there are no callers wishing to give public comment.
Okay. Are there any comments from the members before we adjourn? All right, seeing none, thank you for all being here and for being on time. We will adjourn 4:20 p.m. I will see you all on Wednesday, March 10th at 3:30 p.m. Have a great afternoon.